In 2007, a scan proved Berlin's Egyptian Museum wrong about its own most famous object. The radiologist who ran it, Dr. Alexander Huppertz, later admitted the working theory going in. The stone underneath Nefertiti's face was just structural support, not a portrait. This isn't a story about a forgery, and it isn't about the bust everyone already knows. It's about what the museum's own scientists assumed was sitting underneath it and got wrong. The scan came back. The support theory was wrong. Underneath the stucco, a complete second face, carved with real skill. Different nose, different mouth, cheekbones the public version doesn't have. Here's what never happened next. Nobody published a formal correction. The theory just quietly stopped being repeated. Which means, for however many years that assumption stood, this exact object sat on daily public display, resting on something the museum's own team now says was flatly wrong. And there's a second thread underneath that one. The same 2009 paper that revealed the second face also flagged the bust as structurally at risk. That warning has never been publicly followed up. 17 years, no published recheck, a fracture risk sitting on the most famous face in ancient Egypt, and no public record of anyone confirming whether it's gotten worse. This isn't a hoax claim. Nobody credible is saying the bust is fake. The material science rules that out. This is something narrower, an object everyone assumes has been fully studied, sitting on at least two questions nobody's gone back to close. What's still unresolved? The second face, the fracture warning nobody's rechecked, and the second unfinished Nefertiti, sitting in a different country that almost nobody treats as her match. The published explanation for the two faces is aesthetic ideals, but the exact wording most coverage dropped matters. Huppertz's own sentence in the 2009 paper: "The smoothing may reflect the beauty standards of the era, not reflects, may." That single qualifier has never been resolved. No published follow-up has tested it against a wider body of Amarna portraiture to confirm it or rule it out. 17 years later, it's still the working answer. A Hedge in 2009, still a Hedge today, cited everywhere as settled fact. It also runs against the direction the period itself was moving. Amarna art is known for pushing toward realism. Softer royal bodies, elongated skulls, family scenes that read as real people mid-conversation. This was the era Egyptian court art got more honest, not less. One object breaks that pattern in the opposite direction, and the only explanation on record for why is a maybe that nobody has gone back to test. And the uncertainty doesn't stop at the sculpture. It goes back to the paperwork that decided which country the bust belongs to in the first place. The official 1913 division document, the one that assigned the find between Germany and Egypt, describes the piece as a painted plaster bust of a princess of the royal family. Two things in that sentence don't hold up. The bust isn't plaster. Underneath the surface layer is limestone, confirmed by every scan since. And she isn't a princess. She's wearing the crown reserved for a queen. Nobody has ever definitively established who wrote that description or why it contains two factual errors on the exact 2 points, material and rank, that would have made the piece look far less significant than it is. The document that decided where the most famous face in ancient Egypt would live for the next century was wrong about what it was looking at. That just a support theory wasn't invented in 2007. It was already the working assumption in 1992, the first time the bust went through a CT scanner. 5mm cross-sections, technology not fine enough to catch a face carved 1 to 2 millimeters under the surface. The 1992 scan came back inconclusive. The theory held anyway, not because anything confirmed it, because nothing contradicted it clearly enough to force a change. For 15 years, an unverified assumption stood as the working answer, repeated in museum materials without anyone flagging that it had never actually been tested at sufficient resolution. Then, in 2007, a 64-slice scan with sub-millimeter precision looked at the exact same stone and found the second face waiting there the entire time. The object never changed in those 15 years. The only thing that changed was whether anyone had the resolution to catch the assumption being wrong. Every 2009 write-up ran the same photo. 2 faces, 1 bust. What almost none of them carried sits 2 pages deeper in the actual paper. The scan didn't just map a second face, it mapped damage, fissures in the shoulders, fissures in the lower surface, fissures at the rear of the crown, uneven bonding between the stucco layers. The paper's own language is direct. These are vulnerable points, and pressure or shearing force at exactly these locations risks damaging the object. That's peer-reviewed material, Radiology Volume 251, open for anyone to read. It just never made the trip from the journal to a single public-facing account, because 2 faces made a clean headline, and a documented fracture risk on a museum's single most famous exhibit did not. The Berlin bust wasn't the only unfinished face to come out of that workshop, and most coverage never goes here. It came from the studio of the sculptor Thutmose in the ruins of Amarna, house P47.2. In room 19 of that same house, a second head was recovered, limestone, unfinished, carrying the same symmetrical features as the famous bust. That head is in Berlin too, a few rooms from its far more famous neighbor, rarely mentioned in the same sentence. 21 years later, in 1933, a different excavation team working the same site found a third head, quartzite this time, drafting guidelines still visible, lips already painted red before the sculpting was finished. That one went to Cairo, catalog JE59286, where it's displayed as a standalone piece. 2 unfinished heads, same workshop, same sculptor's method, comparable stage of incompletion, split by a border and 21 years of excavation history. The literature almost never puts them side by side. Berlin's gets folded into Berlin's story. Cairo's gets folded into Cairo's. Nobody's published the direct comparison that puts both next to each other and asks what stage of the same process each one stopped at. Here's the strongest gap in this entire find, and it's still sitting open. The 2007 scan didn't just find a second face, it flagged specific, named structural risk. Fissures at the shoulders, at the base, at the rear of the crown, with a direct warning. Avoid pressure and shearing force at exactly those points. That warning is now 17 years old. There is no publicly available dataset showing a follow-up scan since. No published re-imaging confirming whether those fissures have stayed stable, worsened, or grown. If the museum has run internal checks, the results haven't left the building. No paper, no public release, nothing added to the record that started in 2009. As far as anyone outside that institution can verify, the most detailed structural data ever produced on this object is still sitting in one 2009 publication, unrepeated and unconfirmed since. Line it up. A working theory, just a support, that stood unchallenged for 80 years and was wrong the entire time. A division document from 1913 that got the bust's material and rank wrong on the 2 points that mattered most for where it would end up. An aesthetic ideals explanation that's been a hedge, not a finding, since the day it was published. A structural warning that never made it past the paper it was printed in. 2 unfinished heads from the same workshop room, split by a border, never studied together. A fracture risk, flagged once, unconfirmed for 17 years. None of this proves concealment. None of it needs a conspiracy. What it proves is simpler. The most famous face in ancient history has spent most of a century built on assumptions nobody circled back to check.